Let's go ahead. Let's call F&A committee to order, and we'll start in on it. Please note attendance, and unless there are objections, Jim, Mr. Watton is excused for the evening.
No objection.
All right, and we'll proceed on. First, I've looked at the agenda. I'm okay with it. Are you okay with the agenda as presented, Jim?
I am.
All right, let's consider the agenda as approved.
By the way, I don't have video on because the host is not allowing it.
It's a bad host.
Fortunately, that's how the meeting was set up, so I can't fix it until the next meeting. I have made a note that it is turned off, but we'll fix it the next one I call.
Sorry, Jim.
It's okay with me. Just wanted you to know why you couldn't see me.
Okay. All right. With that, let's move on to approval of minutes dated February 7th, 2023. I have no revisions or additions. How about yourself?
Same with me.
All right. Let's, unless there are objections, we will take the minutes as presented as approved. Hearing no objections, they are approved. Let's move on to approval of warrants and claims. Consideration of claims approval report dated February 27th, 2023. I have no questions or comments, nor have I received any questions or comments in email.
I have no questions or comments.
All right. So unless there are objections, we'll consider the claims as approved. I do have a follow-on question though. There used to be at least a memo to or cover page to sign on this.
I think they modified that, so, but I'll follow up.
When you were chair last year, were you still signing that sheet?
I stopped signing that actually quite a while ago. I can't remember exactly when, so I'm guessing they may have. The council procedure only required the auditing officer to sign.
Okay. We'll proceed on with that then. Oh, you moved ahead on me. Oh, I gotta get back to. All right, can we go back? All right, with that, let's move on. We'll move to item 3, financial management policy, budget amendments. Discussion? You're already changing them?
Well, so in essence, this is in light of our recent kind of budget amendment that we brought forward to council recently. If you recall, as a part of the, not sure what agenda bill number it was, but it was regarding the MOUs with both the Snoqualmie Police Association as well as the International Association of Firefighters. I think what we're hoping to gather from council tonight is what their expectations are around budget amendments. In the past, we've had kind of this mix and match of when we would actually bring a budget amendment to council. So for example, with this particular budget amendment, it's a single issue kind of budget amendment. In other instances, we've had budget amendments that have packaged a number of issues together for the most part and presented back to council as just one agenda bill. I think what we're trying to understand is what are council's expectations when it comes to when we bring a budget amendment forward overall. Our recommendation, I think, from our vantage point is it's more administratively efficient for us to bring a budget amendment on maybe a quarterly basis or at the end of the year, as opposed to maybe doing a budget amendment for a single issue when we know that there's potential an appropriation increase that we're going to seek. But we kind of want to understand what is the expectations from council or staff regarding when they should be bringing a budget amendment forward.
Okay, interesting question.
And then in addition, we would hope to maybe codify this as a part of the financial management policies. 5.6 references budget amendments, but it doesn't exactly specify the procedures around budget amendments and when we actually bring them forward to council.
So Jim, is there a dollar figure or other consideration under which we would prefer a budget amendment to go with an enacting agenda bill? Or could we just take note and do it quarterly budget amendments, taking note as we go of what agenda bills or what actions are causing the amendment?
Well, my point of view is a couple things. First off, I believe that authorizing spending that isn't in the budget is illegal under state law. And it puts our staff in a very awkward position. And we ought not to do that. But beyond that, whether it's legal or not, I'm not a lawyer. So, you know, we'd have to take legal advice. But more to the point is, I think it's just very bad practice. I think I think that staff is doing the absolute right thing when they come to us and say, here's a thing that we think we recommend you consider. And if we then look at that and approve it, but there's no budget for it, I think it is just good housekeeping. Pass the budget amendment now. Don't, you know, authorize some spending that isn't covered by the budget and then have that wait. So that's just second. I just think that goes hand in hand. If you're approving it, approve the budget amendment. That's our job as council. You know, approve the budget. And if we approve some spending beyond the budget, we need to adjust the budget to cover that. The third thing I'd say, the final thing I'd say is, I believe this to be the common practice at other cities. You can look at, you know, not that they're the gold standard, but you just look at Issaquah, for example, they routinely do the same thing. I believe that most cities do. So I think it ought to be a matter of routine, which is if we've asked staff to bring us an agenda bill and we approve a spending that's outside the budget, we should do our job, approve the budget amendment at that time.
You're still so, I mean, if I take a look, just the last meeting, we approved the agenda bill for $90,000, which previously wasn't in the budget, but we think we can absorb through the operation costs. We didn't do a budget amendment. We had a way of paying for it. It wasn't operations expense coming out of the operations of budget ultimately. So it at least stayed within, it wasn't changing accounts.
Correct.
And although you know, the retention bonus, it was in the overall budget in the, I can't remember what we called that reserve we had down there.
Yeah, so in essence, we had sufficient capacity, right, built into our recurring revenues minus our recurring expenditures, so that difference in order to support this. But you're right, there is a number of gray areas. For one example was $92,000. That was unanticipated expenditures, for example, that Jeff had to bring to the Parks and Public Works Committee seeking approval, primarily because they need to complete some additional work prior to actually getting the utility system plans finalized, right, for the most part, and that includes work from the casino. Is it a requirement then of staff in the finance department, right, in order to bring a budget amendment at that time in order to appropriate for dollars that we may have unforeseen during that time, or are we going to have sufficient to cover that over time, say through attrition? And who should be making that decision overall? So should that be upon administration, for example, to make that assessment at that time about whether we need to bring budget amendment forward or not, if we believe that we're going to have sufficient capacity at the end of the 2-year period?
So, but as a minimum, where we're changing accounts, there should be a budget amendment that is enacted in parallel at the same time. Case in point, when we did the retention, we took it out of reserve or ending fund balance and we moved it into wages and benefits. You still there, Jim?
Yeah, I got my hand up. I was waiting to get called on.
Oh, I can't. Just talk. Let's just
Okay.
talk.
Yeah, yeah. So I agree with, if there's a spending item that's within the budget, whether that's because it's within the budget or if it's because we're, lowering something here but raising something there, but regardless of the details, it's within the budget, then that's just an approval of a spending item. If we are approving a spending item that requires additional appropriation, I believe that it's good housekeeping. We owe it to staff, give them that appropriation. If that's the discussion, hey, we need more appropriation for this item, and we agree with them, yep, go ahead and spend this. Right then, we're making the decision now, give them the appropriation, keep this clean, so that there's never any question about whether they're operating within the appropriated amounts. Remember this, they're going to have to come back for that appropriation regardless. The question here is kind of what's the procedure? Do we sort of add them all up at once and do it in one big thing periodically, or do we do them along the way at each item? And maybe there's sort of a perspective that one way is less burdensome perhaps on staff than another way. My belief would be it would be less burdensome if we just do it along the way. And so let's just do good housekeeping. Let's keep them with full appropriation for that which we've told them that they're okay to spend. Let's do it along the way.
And I would view there'd be less chance for escape too. Okay.
Yeah, and goodness forbid that in March we decide, yeah, go ahead and we'll give you more appropriation. In September, after they already spent it, we change our mind. That's not fair. If we just made that decision, give them the appropriation now.
So I think so we've had bienniums in the past where we've had roughly over 10 budget amendments that we've brought forward during that time period. I think we appreciate trying to maybe reduce that number down a little bit more. I think our finance director is worried that we're going to be bringing multiple budget amendments every month or so in order for council to approve, just because there are going to be unforeseen expenditures that that we never foresaw at the time that we were producing the budget overall. And so consequently, I think our recommendation from us is maybe if we produce them on a quarterly basis, if that's soon enough for council every 3 months or so, to bring someone that has maybe a group of amendments attached to it, that would be sufficient. We can certainly work to try to bring budget amendments forward as soon as we know and as soon as attach it to an agenda bill that may require budget amendments in the future, or a budget amendment in the future. But I think consequently our preference would be for at least a quarterly budget amendment that is a routine matter overall for council.
So thought, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think two thoughts I would have, and maybe the second thought is a sort of a helpful way out of this, hopefully. The first thought I have is if we're doing budget amendments monthly, we're not doing any of this correctly. That's not how a budget works. It's a biennial budget, and the expectation is it gets amended once at the mid-biennium review. Now that's great. That's a great goal. The reality is that that's not always the way it works. Okay, fine. But if we're doing it every month, we're really straying away from the whole concept of budget. Budget's supposed to be something that, and the appropriation that you set, and then that's what you live to. Okay, fine, there's exceptions to that, and we don't want to sort of have that turn into an administrative nightmare. Here would be my thought. Whatever those items, those spending items are that need to be authorized and need to have some appropriation go with them, instead of bringing them one by one, just bring them all once a quarter. So if there's 2 or 3 or 4 of them, bring them at once and bring one budget amendment covering the 4 of them. And maybe that's the way to sort of make sure we don't get into a lot of administrative burden. But I think I think trying to build a process around a frequent appropriation amendment, or a frequent budget amendment means we're not, like that, I think is just not doing the budget right.
So, well, okay, had a couple issues in there. Um, so I, so I think under conditions where, so I want to separate out operational activity from unique project or event activities like the retention bonus, which would require an appropriation. Okay. I don't think we should monthly go look at fire department wage and benefits and do an adjustment monthly to try to track against that. That should be mid biennial, whatever, when we really do see it affect. So operational things, they can kind of stack up. There should be discussions, but they can kind of stack up till we have to react. Okay. I didn't quite phrase that right, but that was the intent, is that can build up for a budget amendment to cover more than just that month. Okay, cover the quarter or cover the rest of the budget moving forward for operational activities. For things which are unique and require new appropriations or change of appropriations, such as the contract we just did now last for the water and sewer plans and things like that, the appropriation ought to come with the action, with the agenda bill that initiates the action. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get away from.
I think I was trying to say what you just said. That
Yeah.
sounded to me like what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I just didn't want, if I took verbatim what you said, we might have held up on the retention bonuses to have it match the quarter end appropriation adjustment we have clocked in. And I don't want to artificially, those things, I don't want to artificially accelerate or delay those actions we ought to take.
I completely agree. That's exactly what I was trying to say, is that if something needs doing, well, let's do it. But by the way, give them the appropriation now. If something, if there's some other things that can wait and be sort of brought together, sort of quarterly, and then we just do one budget amendment to cover that, then let's do that. So, that would be a way, as you say, something urgent, we handle it. Something that can wait, we do that, so that we don't create a lot of, paperwork, if you will, right?
Is that clear as mud?
I think I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the audio overall.
It's just, if there are operational changes, those can stack up till we really see what the impact is or how they're going or whatever. Okay. If it is unique activities requiring new appropriations or significant change to existing appropriation, the budget change should come with the agenda bill that enacts it.
The line between unique activities and operating, right, is, it's a bit unclear, right, necessarily, but that's part of the difficulty of this challenge overall, is where's that line necessarily between both at that stage. And so if there's any sort of definitions that council, we can certainly go back and see if we can place some definitions around that, right, overall, to help provide some clarity about what it means to have a unique activity. The budget itself, from my perspective, includes a number of positions. It includes services, for example, supplies that we budgeted for. But in essence, for example, the fire department was given roughly a $10 million budget over this 2-year period for the most part, right? What they do with that $10 million is, in essence, what we've tried to describe, at least during the budget, but it is also somewhat at the discretion of the administration to figure out how to accomplish the results of council during this time period. And so, as part of this, recent agenda bill that we had, was it exactly necessary to have a budget amendment simultaneously with this agenda bill, or could it have been brought at a later date, for example, if we needed a budget amendment at that time? There could have been other savings, budget savings, right, over time that may have provided that offset to these expenditures, which we may have realized over the next 6 or 8 months or so, for example, before having to come back to council for a budget amendment. And so, the question is, do we bring that budget amendment now? Or I think what council suggesting is we actually do that now. It's better to actually do that now instead of wait for an 8-month period, right? For example, to figure out if it's now or never, right, for the most part. But I think we're just trying to figure.
So there, I think you're appropriately highlighting or stating there's a decision tree that comes in if that said when you saw it both ways. I have a new thing requiring appropriation coming in. First decision box is, can I handle it within the existing appropriations or not? If the answer is yes, you don't need a budget amendment. Okay? If the answer is no, then you do need a budget amendment, and that budget amendment should occur at the time we're executing that thing.
Okay.
Okay?
Let me just, future trade-offs. So we're not making a prediction on trade-offs. If we have trade-offs available to us up until that date, then we don't necessarily need to bring the budget amendment back. But if those trade-offs do not exist at that date in which we do bring the agenda bill forward to you, then we should come forward with a budget amendment.
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to take a step back from this because I think maybe my understanding of what I believe the council's responsibility with the budget is, I just want to kind of focus on that for a moment. We ought not to play cat and mouse with the administration and with the staff. We ought to clearly tell them, this is the amount of money that we are authorizing you to spend. And if we have discussions during the budgeting process and they say, well, we're going to buy, 10 light bulbs, and we're going to buy, 5 pencils, and it's all going to add up to $100. And we say, we give you an authority, a budget, an appropriation for $100. Now, if they go in and only buy 3 pencils and they buy a different number of light bulbs, they don't need to come back to us. We said you got $100 to do the pencils and the light bulbs. So, fine, you guys kind of told us how you came up with $100. But fact is, we gave you $100 to run the whole pencil and light bulb, bit thing you got going there. So move that around as you need to, fine. But the expectation is you don't come back to us and say, oh, actually, we need $110 because we want more light bulbs and pencils. The answer is no. We gave you $100 for light bulbs and pencils. So that's how the budget process ought to work. Now, if they then come to us and say, hey, by the way, we also want to buy a chair, and the chair is going to cost $50, I think it's incumbent on us to say, to not say, oh, well, let's wait and see if you can skimp on the pencils and the light bulbs. We already told them green light on the light bulbs and pencils. So if we say, and they say, well, we need to buy a chair, and we agree with them, then I think it's incumbent on us to give them the $50 for the chair. Now, if they come back later and say, hey, by the way, I understand, I didn't need that whole $100 for the pencils and the light bulbs, great. We're not requiring them to spend the $100. We're saying, here is what you are authorized to spend. And if we authorize them, if they come in, need to come and ask us, and we agree and authorize them to spend on something, I think it's incumbent on us to give them the money now, not sort of play cat and mouse, whether we'll give them the money or whether we're going to squeeze them on the pencils later. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but I still want to, case in point, what we did in the last meeting. We had $92,000 unplanned expenditure for utilities. Drew did the analysis and basically said, we have vacant positions which are currently planned in the budget, which will probably generate enough savings to cover that $90,000. So we did not do a new appropriation for $90,000. We approved the expenditure, but said, handle it within your existing appropriation. So that sounds different than what you described.
Yeah, And so that's different. I think if they come and say, hey, you know, you gave us money for the light bulbs and the pencils, and you know, we want to buy something else, but look, we're going to be okay with the light bulb and pencil budget, then we can say, fine, go buy the something else.
Okay.
But if they say, I need more appropriation, if that's what they say to us, and we're willing to say yes, then we ought to give them that appropriation at that time. So it sort of depends what they're asking. Are they asking for additional spending authority, or are they saying, hey, I think I got this? And then, but if they say they need more spending authority, then I think we ought to give it to them right then, if we're willing.
I think we're saying the same. I put a first decision box if I were to flow chart it out.
Yeah.
First decision box of, can you handle this new expenditure within your existing appropriation? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, you don't need to do a budget amendment. Proceed on, bring it forward. If the answer is no, then yes, you do need to bring forward a budget amendment, and it should happen at the same time as the action to do that expenditure.
I 100% agree with that approach. That's what I was trying to say. You said it more succinctly.
I just have a flow chart in my head right about here.
It's the light bulb going off. So
you want to chew on that? And
well, I think so. I think, you know, depends on really how many budget amendments there potentially could be over time, right? As the mayor, Councilmember Mayhew is suggesting right at this time, that if we've done the budgeting right, there shouldn't really be that much that we would have to bring forward. I think we just want clarity early in the biennium for the most part to see kind of where does council want to go. I think we have a kind of a degree of direction, right, for the most part, that anytime that we do need that increase in appropriation, one that we're prepared to actually represent as a part of the agenda bill, which is kind of what we did with the MOUs with the SBA, is I think Councilmember Mayhew read the, sorry, I keep on wanting to refer to him as the mayor pro tem.
go ahead.
Oh, no, that's you, Mr. Chair.
I'm not stuck on titles.
Yeah, but in essence, what I was trying to get to is because we've actually stated that as part of the budget impact statement, that you want the kind of prevailing budget amendment to come forward simultaneously with that. What I also wrote within that budget statement is that we would bring one back at a future date. I don't think, hopefully we're not going to get into the situation during this biennium. It's hard to tell right at this moment if I'm going to have to write that statement multiple times throughout this year. I doubt that right at this stage, but we do know that we're going to have a Teamsters contract that we're going to have to negotiate. We're also going to have, right now, what's ongoing is the salary commission as well. So a number of these kind of different elements that are percolating right now in the city that we may have built some capacity into may require budget amendments in the future. And we may therefore have to consequently, sorry. Okay. Yes. Consequently have to bring back multiple budget amendments this year just because of the uncertainty that we experienced at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So as a consequence, I think we're requesting maybe to bring back a budget amendment quarterly that may package all this up, which I believe I heard Councilmember Mayhew proposing as one of his statements here, but he may want to call into question what I thought he just said. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah, I think I said what you just said. I think we're sympathetic to the notion of not trying to load you with paperwork, but I think the one thing I was saying is usually with budget amendments that unless it's an emergency guy, usually there's a little bit of runway before that needs to be spent. So therefore we can say, hey, you know, we're going to bring you these 3 spending requests, and you know, we're going to package those. All 3 of them actually come with a request for additional appropriation. So we're going to bring you those 3 all at once, you know, at the end of the quarter or during the quarter, but we're going to bring them all at once. We're going to package that up with a quarterly appropriation. We kind of wrap that all up for you in one go, and then you're set with the approval to do the spending and with the budget authority for it. I think that'll work. The only time I think you're going to be sort of, if you will, forced or feel that you need to come quicker is if it's sort of an emergency spend of, hey, I need to spend this right away and I need the appropriation to do it as well.
So catch the nuance he's had is not, you can get by with one budget amendment, but all the actions or agenda bills constituting that budget amendment need to come at the same time as that budget amendment. That
So it comes as a package.
it comes as a package. But again, there's some difficulty in that. I'm not sure the team, if the Teamsters happen to agree in February and the next union agrees in April, I'm not sure the Teamsters are going to be happy waiting 2 months. But it's a way of limiting the number of budget amendments you do.
Okay.
I'm not sure how effective, but go ahead.
No, so I think this has been a fantastic conversation that we've had. Let's go back and we'll chew on that. I think our next goal is to maybe bring back an amendment to the financial management policy that kind of encompasses the discussion here, and then have council kind of review that at the FNA committee as well. So thank you very much for your time and appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew. No, it was a good conversation. Absolutely. All right. And there was another discussion item.
Good evening. It's the ERP.
Hey, that's right.
Apologize for not being on camera, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the new year has kicked off and a lot has been happening from an ERP perspective. We are actually fully started, not just pre-work, on the human and capital management portion of the ERP project. So we've started to have sessions for the HR along with continuing down the finance and system implementations. Some things to go over. Just want to talk about some of the analysis we're doing and preparing for additional ERP modules that were approved in this year's and next year's budget. Reviewing the scope of the project, our timelines, and just looking at our risk assessment. So from a budget analysis and planning perspective, we know that in the new budget cycle that there are some new funds added to cover some of the new Civic Plus items and software that were requested to bring in for both finance and community development. We are looking through now the quotes that we've been provided. We've seen some of the features and some of the items quoted, and we are kind of renegotiating some of that. There's some items in there we don't necessarily think are needed as we're already implementing and things like that, and would like to work through that before bringing it to council and committees to review and approve. But that will be our next steps down the road in the next handful of months as we get that finalized. A overview of kind of a calendar right now. We have tentatively in there some of those new pieces, depending on times for contracts and the partner, those might move back. But the idea is as we bring in some of these revenue modules will be to include the new revenue manager and utilize them in helping to plan and do all of that together so that it's in alignment and launches simultaneously. We are still on track to bring this summer the finance modules online. We'll start out with our general billing and budget and general ledger and our accounts payable, all of those core modules today that we use to run the business of the city. And we'll start using that this summer.
Sweet.
Just general overview of the plan. We are working through the asset management piece from the perspective of marketing with Parks Public Works still. The requested equipment is on its way in and we are planning to get that so they can start getting out there. We've been meeting with them to plan out how they will start collecting data and such and having those discussions. We will also be taking more of the payroll and HR module on. As I mentioned, there's been some training and stuff set up. We've actually, I have to give the finance and HR team just kudos here, really. They are taking on two whole phases essentially at the same time. And we've taken so much of the lessons learned in the finance module that pushed some of our delays and stuff like that, and have implemented them in the payroll and HR piece. And we have been able to streamline the training. Jen has been a great help in kind of helping us sort through some of that from her experience as well. But the team has come to the table well prepared, and we have surprised even our Tyler implementation consultants on the efficiency in which they've been able to start with this new phase. So One of the new risks that we have on our risk measurement that's brought it up from 10 to 11 at the start of this year is the simultaneous implementation of 2 phases, because typically this is where things get hairy in projects like this. But I feel like I should knock on wood or something. We have started out strong, and the team as a whole feels confident in where we're going right now. Questions?
So what are your 6 priority level risks?
So staffing, both originally continuous staffing, because we had so much turnover in the first year, and continued turnover with the implementation of new staff and positions and promoting people internally is one. Sorry, I used to have them listed on here too, and I have to go back and look specifically. I apologize.
Okay.
But they were the ones basically that focused on staffing and on resources, and really on Tyler staffing as well.
And you're getting enough support that these at this stage are mitigated?
Correct. Yep. We had some problems to handle it back this last summer, but really the team has really come together, and we are mitigating our risks and doing a good job right now. So we're in a good status.
Okay. Councilmember Mayhew, do you have any, what do I call him? Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus. You have any questions?
No question, Ms. Reader, other than I know I ask this each time we chat with you, but and so I'm pretty confident that you would bring to our attention anything that you think is a resource constraint that concerns you, something that the council ought to sort of think about trying to help with. It sounds like it's a project. There's some risks, they're being managed, some things are being worked through, but project is on track, and there's nothing you would tell us is needed. It's a project that's ongoing, and that's the status report. Is that right? There's nothing you would alert us to that is needed from us, right?
Correct. Yes. No, I would very much, that would be the top of the meeting agenda. We are in a good place right now. I would very much come to you guys if that was necessary. And I'll be very honest, since taking on this project a little over a year ago now, I feel more confident about where we are today and the status of this project and the ability to complete it than I did a year ago. So.
Well, that's great news. Fantastic. Yeah, nothing else, Chair.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Can we bring the agenda back up? With that, let's go ahead and look at the agenda for council next week. Hearing, appointment, presentation, proclamation as Resilience Month. Time for public comment. Consent agenda is approval of city council meeting minutes and approval of claims report. I think we also moved up in there an item out of Public Works, but we'll get down to
Two of them,
that.
the waste management and the RH2.
Waste management was non-consent.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Oh, that's-
That was, okay.
I think we all had consent,
I had it as consent as well.
but we can move it back.
well, I'll take it if you guys want to have it. If you guys heard it as consent, let's put it on. I'm gonna pull it off.
Well, let's just leave it on non-consent.
Okay, this is, I mean, it's significant enough that
Yeah.
the rest of the council should be aware of it.
Okay.
Okay, and then we had the other one of the extension of the contract with RH2. That was the other, that was the consent item? Okay. And we got an ordinance, second reading ordinance, biennial budget amendment for the retention items. Oh, second reading, okay. Parks and Public Works. Why am I missing? There is a resolution for the 2-year extension, as well as there is the contract for Johnson Heights. When do I see that one here? But catch it up. So there's another.
Is it the Fury site? Is that the one you mean? I don't
hang
know
on,
what
let me-
Johnson Heights is.
I'll get the meeting package up. Wrong one. Let's get this. So we had 3 agenda bills. Resolution ratifying the 2-year extension on the garbage contract. That's Agenda Bill 016. That should be non-consent. Resolution awarding Fury Site Works Incorporated for Williams Addition. Water main replacement project. I think that one was consent as.
I thought that was non-consent.
That was
But it wasn't on the plans,
non-consent,
yeah.
and the amendment number 2 for RH Engineering Utility Systems was on consent, and that was 29 and 30 respectively.
Right. So the first 2 on non-consent and the third one on consent.
Right.
All right, you'll catch those in here. And from what we just did, I don't believe we had any F&A specific agenda bills.
Nope.
Okay. There was nothing from. Can you scroll up a little bit? Okay, nothing from public safety, community development.
I didn't have anything. I don't know if anything happened on those.
Nothing in community development.
Okay. Yeah, please double check in case there's something we missed in public safety if we're not really sure of it. But let us know. All right, and finance administration had nothing.
Looks like
And
the attorney has something to say.
Chair, I think there's a hand raised.
oh, Bob, what do you got?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't activate my video because it says the host has stopped it. On public safety, there was a discussion of a proposed ordinance related to vehicle trespass. I don't recall if that's ready to come forward or not. It may be something that they'll want on your agenda. And then I did have a couple of executive session items I just emailed Ms. Dean about.
Okay. Yeah, and we have.
In addition to the closed session that's shown there for discussion of the class and comp and collective bargaining issues.
Oh, okay. So it's probably to our own benefit to try to keep the agenda short to allow time for the closed and executive sessions.
So, Chair, if you permit me, I'd like to proffer maybe a council roundtable at 6 o'clock, for example. We will have a presentation for this closed session that we have here regarding the class and compensation study. And so maybe that could take place at 6 o'clock before the 7 o'clock meeting. That may give us time after, the council meeting for the additional executive sessions that the city attorney may need, plus additional conversation that may take place after the presentation that we could deliver at 6.
So Bob, your executive sessions, how long do you expect them to be?
I would say potentially 15 minutes each.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
this looks like a very brief agenda. I don't know why we would need to start early. I think there's plenty of time in this agenda for additional topics. I mean, my count is this whole agenda, including those 2 15-minute items, is under an hour.
Right, so if anything, we may have a working session at 7 to start out with if you want to do that right up front. Or do you want to include that as part of the session? And if we're not going to start early, do you want to do it as part of the closed session at the end of the committee, or you want 2 closed sessions to discuss this?
Well, I think just one closed session to discuss this, but we are going to be addressing the financial impacts from the class and comp study overall. And therefore, it may take us a while to get through the material that we hope to prepare or that we are preparing and will probably present to you at that meeting. We might expect an hour plus conversation regarding the class and compensation study. It is not just the introduction of it, it's providing council with the financial impacts as requested at the last council meeting.
All right, and that would be a closed be closed session to have that discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless the city attorney says otherwise.
All right, so my suggestion at this stage, let's add a closed session during the same closed executive session period here. First one being the compensation study.
Okay.
And then we can move on to, oh, you've already got it there. Move on to Bob's items in regards to contract negotiations.
Yeah.
And it just becomes incumbent upon us to keep the discussions down and keep this moving. Okay. I would ask, Mike, that you and Bob look at those and maybe put them in priority order, that if there's anything that needs to drop to the next council meeting, it's our last executive session.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Bob?
Am I understanding the chair to ask us to explore whether we can delay either of those two other executive session items?
Kind of. What I'm asking, what I'm really I hope we can get through them, but if we can't get through them, put them in priority order. So if we have the option of shifting one to the next council, it's the last executive session on the list.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And if they can't, advise us. If they can't be postponed, if we need to extend the council meeting, we'll extend the council meeting at this stage.
Right. I think there's a little bit of flexibility with both.
Okay, cool. Your discretion of how you want to prioritize them then.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go through the executive set. We'll do mayor's report, commission committee liaison, council member, regional updates, and move to executive sessions and adjournment. Do we miss anything on the agenda? Anybody got their hand up? All right, if not, let's proceed forward with the agenda as we discussed with those additions we noted. Okay. And I believe with that, we have covered the agenda.
Right.
Hey, Jim, are you in town? Or are you out of town?
I am out of town. I'm in DC.
Oh, I like DC. Sorry. Okay. Ping me when you get back. I want to have a discussion.
Okay, great. Will do.
All right. With that, unless there are objections, we can adjourn.
Good night.
It's out 10 minutes early. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.